Welcome back, my dear students, for the part 3 of sexual reproduction in organism. So this chapter, that is the first chapter, is totally dedicated to know the basic things which are going to appear in the further classes or further chapters, that is reproduction in organism. So this chapter will give you an basic idea what does reproduction means. Clearly you are going to get an idea. So in our last two video, I hope I have cleared you about the asexual reproduction and types of sexual reproduction in plants as well as in animals. So let me pass on or move on to the sexual reproduction. So sexual reproduction involves formation of male and female gametes either by same individual or by different individual of opposite sex. So it involves the formation of male and female gametes in the same individual. Means if male and female reproductive organs are present in the same individual, we call it as bisexual, or in different individual, in the sense one organism possesses male or female, another organism will possesses male or female, that is unisexual of opposite sex. All organism reaches the stage of growth and maturity before they reproduce sexually. So before going for the reproduction, my dear students, every organism has to reaches to a maturity. So if you look at the life cycle of human being, the human being take birth, we call them as a baby or a childhood, early childhood. Then they change it, they grows into their height, weight and all, we call it as a growth phase. Then they reaches to a phase, we call it as maturity. After maturity they grow older and at the end they are going to die off. So in the sexual reproduction we call these events, the events of all these changes which is going to take place in the life cycle of human being, we call it as the first phase is called a juvenile phase. So you are supposed to remember all the names of the phases. Juvenile phase, or in case of plants we call it as vegetative phase. Then comes your maturity phase, or last one is called your senescent phase. Okay. So juvenile phase in animal, the period of growth to attain maturity is called juvenile phase. The same juvenile phase in plants are referred as vegetative phase, the phase of a growth. The growth phase till you attain maturity, that phase we call it as juvenile phase. Okay, in case of the plants, the juvenile phase is termed as vegetative phase. In angiosperms, end of vegetative phase complete as soon as they start full flowering. So how to understand that the plants have reaches to a juvenile phase? The question may rises because in case of human beings we go for menstrual cycle. In case of non-primates also they are going for another cycle, we call it as Oyster cycle. So when these cycles are known to us, we say that we have attained to a maturity. The animals and the human being, they attain to a maturity. Now in case of angiosperm, that's nothing but flowering plants, we will come to know that they have attained to this juvenile phase when they starts giving rise to the flowers. When they blooms out the flower, we should understand that the plant has come to a maturity. So the next phase is senescent phase. The end of the reproductive phase is called senescent phase or old age phase after this individual dies off. So there are three phases: growth phase, then a juvenile phase, and last one is senescent phase, that is old age, when we will be waiting for the death. We will not have any hopes, we'll lose all our energy and we'll just lead our life like without any enthusiasm, without any more energy in our body. That is what we will be waiting for our death. That is the old age phase or senescent phase. Now let me tell you more about some of the peculiarity in the flowering plants, that is in annual and biennial plants. Everybody know that plants are being categorized into three on the basis of their life cycle, that is annuals, biennials and perennials. If the plant are living for 1 year, we call them as annuals. If the plant is going to lead its life for 2 years, we call it as biennials. If the plants are going to lead their life cycle more than 3 years, that is more than 100 years also, we call it as perennials. On the basis of life cycle, it is annual, biennial and perennial. Basis on the height, I think you know, herbs, shrubs and trees. So here in annual and biennial plants, flowering is once or twice in a year. In these plants, vegetative reproduction and senescent phase are clearly identified. So, in case of biennial plants and annual plants, the flowering will take place either once in a life, that is once in a year, or twice in a year. And the vegetative reproduction and we call it as juvenile phase or vegetative phase, and the senescent phase are clearly identified. The phase of the maturity and the phase of dying, you can easily see it in annuals and biennials. Example, rice, wheat, marigold, these are the annual plants. In some plants, flowering occurs several times in a particular season. You might have seen in case of roses, in case of the flowering plants, they give the flower many times in their life cycle. So in some plants, flowering occur only once in their lifetime. After that, the plant dies off. See the peculiarity you are going to see. In some plants, flowering occurs several times in a particular season. There will be a particular season, on that they will give rise to many times the flowers, the jasmine or mogra, or you can say roses, etc. And in some plants, the flowering occurs once in a lifetime. Only once they'll give a rise to a flower, then the plant will dies off. So these are the peculiar things you should know, and it will come for 1 mark. Example like bamboo flower after 50 to 100 years. The bamboo flower, the bamboo plant, which is a perennial plant which will lead its life more than 100 years. So the flowering time, in the sense, it will give the flowers once in its lifetime. That is, it may give the flower after 50 years or 100 years, then the plant dies off. Another plant, the name of the plant is Strobilanthes kuntiana or Neelakuranji. Neelakuranji or Strobilanthes kuntiana, it flowers once in a 12 years. After each 12 year, it is going to give you a flower, that is Neelakuranji or Strobilanthes kuntiana. Both the things are very important for 1 mark question. So do remember, the plant which flowers once in a lifetime is bamboo. The plant which can flower after once in a 12 years is Neelakuranji or Strobilanthes kuntiana. Now coming to the reproductive cycle in animals. So reproduction in animals is seasonal. Like reproduction in some animals is seasonal. Only in season they reproduce. Like birds lay eggs only in specific season. And the placenta of these animals exhibit reproductive cycle that leads to change in the ovaries and hormonal level. So reproduction in animals, the seasonal breeders, we call them as seasonal breeders, the animals which can reproduce in a particular season, like birds. Okay, especially like birds, they lay the eggs, they go for the reproduction in a specific season. So we call them as seasonal breeders. And some of the animals, they breed continuously, so we call them as continuous breeders. Like us, human beings are said to be the continuous breeder. They do not require any season to go for reproduction. So coming to the 2 types of cycle, that is Oyster cycle and menstrual cycle. As I said you, there is a placental, the animals which possesses placenta in their body. The female organism which possesses a placenta in their reproductive structure or reproductive organism which are having the placenta, there will be a change in their ovaries, and there will be a change in the hormonal level which is present inside the body, that leads to 2 types of cycle, that is Oyster cycle and menstrual cycle. So in the exam they will ask you differentiate between Oyster cycle and menstrual cycle with examples. 3-mark question they will ask you. Differentiate between Oyster cycle and menstrual cycle. It is the now coming to the first one, that is Oyster cycle. It is a reproductive cycle of non-primates. Non-primates examples are cow, dog, rat, tiger, buffaloes, etc. They are said to be non-primates. So these animals are reproductively active only in a specific season. So they are said to be seasonal breeders. As I have said you in the beginning, the birds, the cow, buffalo, dogs and rat, they need particular season to go for the reproduction. And they will carry out a cycle in their life cycle. We call it as Oyster cycle. Okay, where the sex urge will be more and they will reproduce in a particular season. So we term them as seasonal breeders. Coming to the menstrual cycle, it is a reproductive cycle of primates. Primates are nothing but monkeys, apes, human beings. So the reproductive cycle or a menstrual cycle, it is a reproductive cycle of primates like monkeys, apes and humans. These are reproductively active throughout their reproductive phase. So till they are in the menstrual cycle, till they go for the menstrual cycle, there is a phase where they stop the menstrual cycle, my dear students, after a certain age like 45 to 50 years. So till this we call them as a reproductive phase. Till that they do not need any season. They will be active in any season. They are active throughout their life till they will have their reproductive cycle or menstrual cycle. Hence they are termed as continuous breeders. So they are termed as continuous breeders. So my dear students, the part 3 I'll wind up here itself. Next we will continue with events in sexual reproduction in part 4. Part 3 I'll be winding up now itself. So with the Oyster cycle and menstrual cycle, so part 3 will wind up. Part 4 I'll be continuing with events of sexual reproduction.